In modern times, it's been regarded as a bogus history. And the reason for it being a bogus history comes out of Oxford and Cambridge and London in England. And the theory was that Troy never existed other than in the mind of Homer. And as Homer wrote a fictitious poem about Troy, Troy was a fictitious place. It had no foundation in fact or truth and was non-existent. Therefore, a history which based itself upon the first king of Britain being Brutus, the great-grandson of Anchises and grandson of Aeneas of Troy, and that the whole of the British nation were originally, or a large part of them were originally Trojan, had to be a false history. As it was a false history based on Homer's fictional epic, therefore you throw out British history. And this actually was done. And you will find books by these supposed scholars from Oxford and elsewhere stating this in the words that I've just stated.
Look, the study of ancient history, it doesn't matter if it's cuneiform and the ancient Sumerians and so on, or Egypt and the alleged decipherment of hieroglyphics, or the Hittites. You've got to get the ancient scripts and you've got to be able to decipher them, and you have to know the language. So you have to know the alphabet and the language. So this project is all about an alphabet, believe it or not.
The Culman alphabet.
This alphabet is preserved in Wales. Now, the reason for it, it's British. Welsh history is British history. It belongs to all of us. The one part of Britain that wasn't really overrun at some time in the centuries and sometime destroyed by Irish people in North Wales or others flooding in was southeast Wales.
Okay.
Immensely powerful. Glamorgan, Gwent, bits of Brecon, and parts maybe the Red Cantref, Gloucester to the west of the Severn. Largest place called Essulug. The Romans called Essulug Silures, they call them. It means abounding in prospects. That's where the alphabet and the ciphers were preserved.
Got an alphabet in Britain, right? The Colburn alphabet. And it's tracing the alphabet is the key. I mean, I got a guy writing to me a month ago. He's found more Colburn inscriptions in a cave in Pembrokeshire.
And they declared that the ancient alphabet was a complete forgery invented in roughly 1800 AD, 200 years ago, Napoleon's time. And the villain of the piece was a fellow named Edward Williams, who was a great copier of old manuscripts. You see, in Britain, manuscripts rot and they fade and they get wormwood and they get damaged in fires and that, you know. So they kept recopying them down the years. So the Colburn alphabet is total forgery. Well, that doesn't explain how it's on stones in Scotland, which are confidently dated to around 500 AD, which is only 1300 years before it's forged. It doesn't explain how Llewellyn Shawn wrote down the ciphers of the alphabet in 1530. It doesn't explain why there are stones in England with the Colburn alphabet on it. 1852, 28 feet down, they dug up a stone in St Paul's churchyard in London, plastic with it. Can't be right. There are stones in Wales, same alphabet. English people who wrote sort of travel itineraries around Britain, various things, they noted several stones, and in the pre-photograph age they drew pictures of stones in England which had same Colburn alphabet.
Which he claimed was forged in 1800 and that it was no earlier. Therefore, any claim of there being an alphabet earlier was spurious. And he targeted one person. Well, that's peculiar because a major Oxford scholar published a whole book on the Colburn alphabet, not this guy, you know, in 1802. And then we find that David ap Gwilym, who died in 1367, mentions it. And then we find that two other poets around 1420 mention it, another two around 1440 mention it, and another couple in the 1470s. Right. Then you get another poet, Rhys Goch of Oswestry. He writes a whole poem about it, lampooning it a bit, in 1582. Well, that's a long time before 1800 forgery. And this goes on.
We found a person writing in 1897, a publication in 1848 from Oxford, a publication in 1852 again, and a publication in 1906 saying, isn't it strange? The Welsh British ancient alphabet is identical, or near identical, to the old Etruscan alphabet and the Pelasgian alphabet of the Aegean and Turkey.
It's identical to Etruscan, it's identical to the Pelasgian in Turkey and the Aegean. So we decided the alphabet was genuine. So we took some of these inscriptions.
It was best to sort of work our way backwards slowly. There are stones in Scotland, Wales and England which have this alphabet on them.
Okay.
So we'd worked on them, they'd read out.
We said, well, that's a G, that's a W, that's an E, you know. And out came Welsh words. And we could read the unreadable inscriptions in Britain. So we took little tiny inscriptions in Etruria in Italy. Now there are 14,000 plus inscriptions in Italy and they can't read them. Pliny, writing around the turn of the Christian era, he wrote, be careful, Etruscan is not related to Latin or Greek. So what do? They try and translate the Etruscan as Latin or Greek. Get nowhere. So we took little ones, like on a wine jug, there was an inscription. And it said, drink too much and you're bandy-legged like a sailor. So we've now been happily reading unreadable, indecipherable Etruscan since 1984. We've attempted to tell archaeologists and scholars and linguists, they don't even answer your letters. You see, we're not working for a university. Thank God.
You know, we'll go and read the ones in Italy now.
Okay.
Now we've got an alphabet going back in that way. Now
we've got an alphabet going east, haven't we?
going east, well,
coming
I
from
would
the
think
east.
it came from the east,
Okay.
right?
The tracing of British history in the Ark relies on tracing the alphabet.
The passage of things written in that alphabet are very
British people
similar.
went to New Zealand, Australia, they took their language, their alphabet and their religion with them. So if you trace our ancestral histories that were thrown away, they're junk, you know, get rid of them, don't need them, which happened in the mid-19th century, because you've got to realise Darwin is around and he's saying, hang around, you know, God didn't wave the wand and in 6 days he had all the animals. You know, these are developing over centuries and millions of years. And then you had earlier there Lyell, who was saying these are fossils, and fossils don't form in the last couple of thousand years. They're millions of years old, and he was into that. And the church was rocking like a boat because, oh my God, it's supposed to be happening in 4004 BC, you see. Right. And here into this mix comes this business of the alphabet. The alphabet takes us back right across through Europe, you see. And so the journey starts actually in Egypt. The alphabet is on shrouds of mummies, right?
When Austin Layard dug up the archives of the Assyrian emperors at Nineveh, and he did this in 1846, the first find was 25,000 clay baked tablets, all their writings and archives and deal.
Yes.
Packed them all up, sent them to London British Museum.
I've seen them, I think.
Later, an Arab gentleman, I think his name was Halmoud, but he found another 5,000. When these tablets got to the British Museum, they were looking at them and so they suddenly, wow, some of these have got the ancient British alphabet. Now,
there's a coincidence.
There's a coincidence.
What are the chances of that?
Well, wait a minute. You see, you've got the alphabet right through Turkey. The Assyrians now have it in correspondence probably sent to them. So we reasoned this. If the alphabet stretches back in that direction, how much further does it go? This starts you thinking, because the name of the 10 tribes of Israel, as recorded by the Assyrians, was the Cymry, K-H-U-M-R-Y.
Which sounds very familiar to me, because it's on all those cars that drive across the Severn Bridge,
right.
isn't it?
Well,
the word Cymry.
Since about 1900, they've dropped the KH and replaced it with a hard C, but the correct spelling up until 1900 was K-H-U-M-R-Y. That's the 10 tribes of Israel. They're on Egyptian things. Now, when Austin Layard...
I've got to stop you there.
Go on.
Because this is good. So, are you saying then that the early Brits were in fact the 10 tribes of Israel?
Yeah, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it. Well, they didn't get lost. They knew where they were. Nobody else did.
They were hiding in Wales.
That's right. Well, in the whole of Western Britain,
Whole of Western
probably
Britain.
Lancashire,
Okay.
up Cumbria, up to Strathclyde and so on.
The Dead Sea Scrolls, you've heard of them.
Yes.
Most of them are on papyrus, right? And so on. But 2 of them are on copper scrolls, right? And these appear to have been rolled up and placed in jars for preservation. Well, the only way to unroll them was to cut them into little, roll it a bit, cut a strip, and lay all the little curved strips alongside each other. Then you could see what they were saying. Of course, they then found all the Dead Sea Scrolls on papyrus written in Aramaic, right? But the 2 copper ones aren't. And they're not in a different alphabet. And they can't read them. The guy Allegro said he could, but he can't. Well, the theory by Professor Carl MacArthur in the States, he said, I don't know what they are, but they're Hebrew. See, the Hebrews and Judeans weren't speaking Hebrew, they were speaking Aramaic, ancient Hebrew. And he said, what must have happened is some scribe somewhere in a remote village was given these immensely expensive copper plates to write on, and he was semi-literate and spoke in a local patois, and so he put it in that. Of course, all the really clever guys and the educated guys, they're writing on cheap, inexpensive papyrus. It doesn't make sense, you see. And if you look at the copper scrolls, there are holes. There's a plate. If you put them all together, make a plate, right? There are holes a few inches down all around, and holes on the bottom. Well, clearly it's been a plate that's been nailed onto a wall, because there are tear marks up from each of the holes and down. If you rip that copper plate off a wall, roll it up, put it under your shirt or whatever, you've saved it maybe from the Jerusalem temple, because it's known that Solomon put plates of gold on the temple walls.
Yes.
Pharaoh Shishak, about 935, took them away. His son Rehoboam couldn't afford gold plates, so he put up.
Yeah. Now,
So what we do, we trace the alphabet from there to where they were deported. The 10 tribes were deported.
The 10 tribes of Israel are taken away from Jerusalem, right? Solomon's temple's there.
Yes.
King Ahaziah of Judea, 2 tribes, he's had a successful battle with the Edomites, and he's going to attack 10 tribe Israel. And he's warned, there's a famous verse in the Bible about a passing bullock stepping on a thistle. He's the thistle, you see. Don't do it. Well, he got hammered. His army is destroyed. He's tied behind the chariot of Jehoash, the Israelite king, goes to Jerusalem, pulls down 200 yards of the wall, and Jehoash then takes everything from the palace, and he takes everything from the temple.
Oh, including the scrolls, then?
Including the ark.
Oh, the ark.
Aha. Because you've got to realise it's in Kings and Chronicles in the Bible, and it's in Flavius Josephus.
Wasn't there a family that was looking
Correct.
after the ark
That's right.
for generations?
The family of Obed-Edom. He took them as well. There'd be no point in taking the family of Obed-Edom if he didn't take the ark. So we said, hang on, the ark's gone.
So the ark left the temple.
It's gone north to Samaria in 790 BC. We know.
And you found all the evidence for this, presumably?
Yeah. Well, what we did, we trying to translate the Etruscan stuff. No, they went north of Samaria. 687, Sennacherib, the Assyrian emperor, is murdered by 2 of his sons. The heir, the older son, has a civil war with them. The 10 tribes take off and they cross the Euphrates, going west through Turkey.
Right.
Second book of Esdras, chapter 14, right? Okay? They are going through Turkey, and the Greeks pick up on them, and they call these Cymry the Cymroi. Cymroi, Cymry, right?
The Welsh again.
They get, well, the Brits.
The Brits.
Yeah, I'm a Brit, you know, we're all Brits, come on. They get to the Dardanelles, half the people stay there, and the other half go to Italy.
The Dardanelles are in Turkey, aren't they?
Yes, on the end of Turkey, where the little gap we go up in the Black Sea.
On the Bosphorus.
The Bosphorus.
Yeah.
Where the great city is.
Yeah.
And
named after Constantine.
Yeah, that's right, Constantinople. So, anyway, by looking at the the Etruscan writings, we found we could read them.
To
10 tribes of
Armenia,
Israel.
the 10 tribes of Israel. Then they went through Asia Minor, and then half of them went to Etruria, Italy, half went to the Isle of Lemnos, and then to the UK. It's all recorded.
Yes.
See, in one stele of Sennacherib, it says in one of his deportations, he removed 200,120 people. So these are not small groups.
That's a huge
diaspora. Well, they went through Asia Minor. The Greeks call them the Cymri, see?
Yes.
And they were like a tidal wave. Nothing could stop them. Half go to Italy, half stay there.
No, like locusts, in a sense.
Oh, right. Takes some stopping. So the other half stay there, and then they come to Britain in 500. Now, we're still translating. We've moved from Italy. We're in the Aegean now. On the island of Lemnos, a stele was found in 1876, and it's plastered with Cauldron writing. And there's a guy holding a spear, big guy with a spear. And it tells how the people have gathered there, and they're under their
on the island of Lemnos.
Right. Well, in the British records, they say the people gathered on the Isle of Ligotia, which is Lemnos.
But surely that's further east than Italy.
No, it's south of it. Yes, we've moved. We're going back in time. We're going back.
There
They've
you
now
go.
got the Dardanelles. Get them on.
Okay.
They gathered in the records. It says how they gathered their fleet at this island. And here's this stele, and it tells how they've been directed by the god, and they're going to sail together to a great green island out in the Western Ocean. That's what it says.
So they sailed out of the Straits of Gibraltar through there and
To the UK.
to the UK.
No, they picked up 3 or 4 other groups en route. One with Corinus, who goes to Cornwall, and so on. So here is a story matching the British record of a gathering on an island to sail to the UK. And it's the secret is this language and alphabet, perfectly preserved.
The alphabet appears all along the route. Everything depends on that. And there are inscriptions stating where the ark was at certain times.
Right.
And it's obviously in the UK.
We've
Keep
moved
up
from
there.
Britain to Italy.
Okay.
And we're on our way to Turkey. We're going back in time and distance. There is a famous bronze tablet. Now, you've got to realize bronze is extremely valuable. But there are 3 sections to it. And the first one says how the people are in a place where there's great pestilence and storms, and they're unhappy. And they are taken and led away from this, and they follow a little cabinet riding in a cart.
So this is the ark.
I think so. And they
Yes.
come to a place where they are content and happy, and that's where they live. The second section says they're happy where they are, but they're taken away forcibly, right, to a place where they are unhappy, and to get there they follow a little cabinet that rides in a cart. And the third story is that they again take off and they go and follow the little cabinet.
Because
in
of the
cart.
pestilence.
And no, the pestilence is the first one.
Yeah.
The second one, they're forcibly taken away.
Okay.
And the third one, they're unhappy where they are, so they take off and they go.
And half of them go to Etruria. That's in Herodotus. Half of a nation goes to Italy, Etruria. The other half stayed there till about 500. And then they come to the UK. Now we knew if that little box that rides in a cart is the ark taken from Jerusalem, not south by little baby Menelik in his carrycot to Ethiopia, went north, right? And if it went north and it went to Dardanelles, it either went to Italy, Etruria, or it came to the UK.
We have established a firm trail, and a trail of the people, which matches the history.
With evidence.
With evidence. If the alphabet's right, the translation's right, our histories say they gathered on an island of Ligotia.
Lemnos.
Lemnos. And it all seems to work together and fit very, very well.
So where do they land in the UK?
Certainly one group landed in Cornwall. Another group appeared to have landed in South Wales in the Aberavon area. There's a famous story of one of the local kings opposes them, and there's certain, I think, that one group would have landed in Totnes in Cornwall, Devon area.
Devon, yeah.
I would think so, yeah. That's very well sort of, I mean, it's so solidly thought of there, I wouldn't doubt it. But another major group would have come up the Severn to South Wales, that's fairly obvious.
Right. Cardiff and the valleys that are on there always had a legend, and the legend was known to me when I was a young kid, in the 30s now. Everybody said about it, it was just a local story. There's a great big box somewhere, a wooden box, and inside this wooden box is a great treasure. And the box is guarded by what they, in Welsh, two cig fran goa, which means flesh-eating crows, ravens. A cherubim of old time wasn't a nice little angel, he was a fearsome dragon beast with wings, you see.
So there are 13 ancient tales in Wales, and they're called the Mabinogi.
The Mabinogi.
No, they've restyled them the Mabinogion, which means children's tales, which has shielded them from the church, I think. But the Mabinogi seems to mean origins. So we realised that these were genuine tales saying things about storms and comets coming into our solar system, Venus going out of orbit, which is matching the ancient observations of Babylonian and other observatories. They say, oh, these guys didn't know what they were doing because Venus didn't do that. It did. Okay. So we then had a new couple of other stories which really are how to read the stories. You follow me? It's all wound up with names, but they're really talking about planets and so on. But the last three are important, and the last three are Peredur, son of Evrodd. Peredur is Steel Shirt. He's the planet Jupiter. There's Geraint and Enid. Geraint is Mars, strength. And the other one is Owen, and Owen is Orion. When you realise their solar stories, you can realise that we've got constellations in the heavens, and the planets move through the constellations because they're orbiting the sun.
All over South Wales, Glamorgan, Gwent, there are huge mounds, mainly on hilltops. Huge earth mounds, I mean really big earth mounds, size this room. Some are smaller. And my colleague said to me one day, he said, Alex, what's that one up there, you know? And I said, he said, a bloody, I said, a bloody head. Oh, I said, that's a ferocious warrior. And sometimes a penny drops, doesn't it, you know? We'd already learned, ignore the Greeks, ignore the Romans. You want to find something out, ancient Arab, ancient Hebrew, ancient Egyptian names. The ancient Arabs, Hebrews, and Egyptians called the star constellation Hercules a ferocious warrior. And a penny was dropping, oh boy, because over to the other direction is Tumbalu, the he-goat, Capricorn. And over the other way, we had a bloody boat ship on the top of the hill, and that was spot on for the great constellation of Argo. Now, if you've got 2 or 3 stars, you can triangulate and find a pole star. Am I right? So we did, and it's a standing stone. And from there, we found all these big mounds. They're all named and located for stars, the major stars in the heavens. So you got a star map on the ground. They go on about the Nazca drawings, don't they, in Peru? We got something better and bigger. We got huge mounds stayed up, a gigantic map of the stars in mounds. Just outside Cardiff on the Garth Mountain, there's 2 big ones and 1 little one. It's right for the belt of Orion. Down in Morganstone below, big one in the woods. And you can find the 4 outlying stars of Orion. Come across the way in Cardiff, houses built all around it. Taurus, big mound. Another one on the other side of Cardiff, on top of the hill. Aries are up, and you go on to Capricorn. And they're everywhere. And that's how you get after the ark. All you got to do is find Regulus, which is the biggest of the lot. You see, we said Regulus because Regulus star is the biggest star in Leo, the lion. And Leo the lion is the emblem of Judea and Jerusalem. So we thought there's a good chance that that's it.
So it is suggested that the large earth mounds found all over South Wales were laid out by the ancients in a pattern to specifically represent first magnitude stars of various constellations. Wilson and Blackett have produced many star mound maps which confirms this theory. The mound which represents the star Regulus turns out to be at a place called Ynys y Bull. Just outside this village is a prominent hill or mound. According to Allen, the top section of this mound is man-made.
right.
Is this where the Ark of the Covenant is?
Yes, in our opinion, yes, and I'll tell you why.
It's a man-made mound, about 4 acres of it, 60 feet high, all man-made, on top of another hill. Someone in antiquity built a stone wall around the top, right? No gates. Why did they do that? Why would they build a stone wall around the top of a Welsh hill? I do not know. But the inside area is called Golwg, which means place of worship. And the whole mound is on its bill. On this enclosure of, or special area of, and then it's, if you've got BWL, it's special place. If it's BYL or BIL, it means ark. There are 4 sumps on the north side, like big hollows in the ground. In the bottom are pits with white stones in them, right? The way they drained ancient chambers in Britain underground is they had a sump in the bottom of the chamber and they ran a little shaft, a tunnel down the hillside. And where it would then come out the hillside, made a little tick, so it came up into the bottom of one of these bowls. They have been excavated elsewhere. So water would run down into the chamber, be bled off down the shaft. It wouldn't rush out and do damage, it would come up in a tick. And there were these white stones filling up these 18-inch circular things in the bottom of the curved sump. It's like a saucer upside down, you know, sitting in a bowl. Perfectly made. Thing is, no weeds ever grew on these stones. So we got a sample and found there were 3 different sorts. One of our lads took them to the museum and other places. They turn out to be stones that can only be found in Cornwall, 300 miles away. So we know there are at least 4 underground chambers there.
Now, what we did, we got ground penetration radar, which we're not very good at working, so we need a better person to have a go with us.
Geophys, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
We got our lad from London. We have one of the world experts, fortunately. The first guy who was ever able to detect metal underwater. And he'd been out in Oz in Australia, then he was gold mining, and then he was out in Arizona, but he came back and he wanted to meet us. We got hold of him. He's got a metal detector, reaches down 30 feet, and it'll tell you if it's ferrous or non-ferrous. There is an object there, 2 feet by 4 feet, and it's non-ferrous metal.
In order to verify Alan's claims of a 2 feet by 4 feet non-ferrous metal object being detected at Unis Abul, I telephoned Alan Hassel, who was operating the metal detection equipment. I spoke with him for about 2 hours on the telephone and have a full statement of how he scanned the hill by mapping out a grid and moving horizontally and vertically with a spacing of 1 meter between each scan. He confirmed that he did indeed locate a buried object which was approximately 4 feet by 2 feet made of non-ferrous metal. When the scanning was carried out, unfortunately the landowners were not there to witness the testing and were therefore slightly sceptical of the claims. No agreement has so far been reached with the landowners to carry out any excavation. I decided to go down to Wales to find out for myself what the landowners' opinions were. We're heading towards a place called Unis Abul, which is the location that Alan Wilson strongly believes the Ark of the Covenant is buried. And behind me is a hill on top of which is a man-made mound. The hill is, I'm not sure if this is the correct pronunciation, Twin y Glog, and according to Alan Wilson, the Ark of the Covenant is buried inside the man-made part of this hill behind me. And he has in the past tried to get this hill dug up. He's approached the Welsh authorities, he's approached the farmers. The farmers have been talked out of having any excavation done. So I'm intrigued to speak to the owners of the land, a farm just a few minutes down the road here. So I'm going to knock on the door and firstly ask them if they've considered, you know, getting this land dug up, because if the Ark of the Covenant is there, you're talking the most important object in archaeological history, if you like, is inside this hill in Wales, if Alan Wilson is correct. So I'm going to go and speak to them. I'm first going to ask them if I can have access to their land, just so that I can film on top of the hill and film the sumps which are along the side of the hill, which allegedly keep the whole chamber dry. I asked if I could go on the land to take some photographs, and straight away they said no. So then they wanted to know why, so I explained the fact that I'd followed some of Alan Wilson's work, and they were very well aware of Alan's work, and they explained to me what happened when he came here, and that he brought some ground penetrating radar here and he did some tests, etc. Now they said that they weren't convinced that he'd actually found anything, and they said that he hadn't actually shown them any concrete results that there was anything there, so therefore they weren't prepared to have their land dug up based on what they thought was nothing. But they then did say that having said that, they didn't go up there and see what he was doing. They didn't show much interest.
I think they're fairly open-minded, but I think they would, as we would, welcome academic participation. I mean, we'd welcome it. I have no bones about it. We did try to, we got somebody in the astronomy department of Cardiff University very interested in this,
yes.
The mounds and the mirror. And he went to the history department and he went to the archaeologists and said, look, how about getting involved in this, you know? And they wouldn't.
They wouldn't because...
they said they'd been sort of a bust-up with us. There hadn't been a bust-up, we never spoke to them.
So I've persuaded them to at least have an independent person come on the land and do another test, and if they do find something there and they can demonstrate it to them, that they would possibly then consider having the land excavated. I can confirm that I have been contacted by a company that is willing to provide free ground penetration radar testing, and I am in the process of arranging a suitable date to carry out the testing. Wilson and Blackett's claims do not end there. They also claim to have located the resting place of the Holy Cross, also in Wales.
There are 25 histories of Helen of the Cross. That's the mother of Constantine the Great empress, wife of Constantine Chlorus, emperor. She goes to Sinai with a couple of legions, footsteps of Moses. She went to Jerusalem, 325, 326 AD, and she said, give me the cross, I want it. And of course there was a...
This is the cross of Jesus you're talking
about. This is the cross that Jesus is nailed on, you see.
And she demands that they give her the Holy Cross. They will tell us, so she gets about 120 of them, tortures them a bit, gets it down to 50, tortures them, gets it down to about 20, finally gets it to 5 guys, and finally gets it to 1 man. Puts him in a dry well with no water and no food. It's a dry well. And finally he says, oh, all right. He tells her where the Holy Cross is. She goes along, gets the nails, makes them into a bridle bit for a horse for her son. So he's got the nails of the cross in his horse to guide it. She covers the cross with jewels and gold, and she puts in a silver casket. She assembles her fleet and sails back to the UK.
And this is recorded in the Exeter book, and Anglo-Saxon history got in 25 different histories. So the cross is in the UK.
And this is all in our histories. It's written down, clear, in the manuscripts. They can't mistake it. The one we use is the Exeter book, which is an Anglo-Saxon Dark Age history, or an English one, right? So we're not Welsh on this one. But also it's in the Harleian 3859 manuscript, which describes in the genealogies how Helen brought the cross, you know, to Britain and one thing and the other. She then parades it around, mainly around Wales and parts of England. So you get, see what these people did, they didn't leave any of their goods behind in palaces or anything when they went somewhere. They got all their train of wagons of ox carts and that ready, and they loaded all their best possessions on and took them with them. So about every 10 miles, the ox wagons would stop.
If you go to Wales, you'll find a little field. The field of the cross, the road of the cross, 10 miles further on, the pass of the cross, the vale of the cross, the wood of the cross. And it goes all around the country like that. See, when these potentates, kings and that, travelled, they didn't leave any loot behind them in the palace and nothing, or the court. Oh no, they took everything with them in ox carts.
And you can follow the route that she parades the cross around Wales for everybody to see it. And it says she then put it in Constantinople. Well, the English being the English, they go, it's gone to Constantinople.
Which Constantinople? You see, there's a little hamlet in West Wales called Constantinople. Yeah. Nearby is Castell Ellyn Fawr, the castle of the great Ellen.
And you go there in the lanes, you see huge blocks of beautifully, hewn cut stone being used in all the hedges. And in the woods there's big ruins. Nobody ever bothers with it. And there's other names about, you know, the Mabinogi story of the Peredur steel shirt visiting the Countess, and the Countess is the Empress of Constantinople. And he stays with a miller at the town with a miller's wife. Trevelyan Varchog, Milltown Knight. It's there. There's a little valley, and every farmer's got a mill on it. And he says, why have you all got mills? It's to feed all the soldiers that's here. There's 14 farms in that little valley. Every one has an ancient mill on it. Right? And Bannon, River of the Empress. Yeah. Kevin Bannon, Ridge of the Empress. You know, da-da-da. And the ruins of a very big palatial place that in the bloody woods, the Empress. And the name after name, it's where she put the cross.
Another discovery of international importance, which we have been forced to keep secret. We don't know exactly what is behind this ancient wall over the mouth of this cave. However, numerous ancient records indicate that this is the cave of the Cross of Christ, brought from Jerusalem in AD 325 by the British Christian Empress Helen. Helen was the wife of the Emperor Constantine Chlorus of the West. She was also the mother of Constantine the Great, who permitted Christianity in the Roman Empire in AD 312. This secret walled-up cave was located through methodical industrial techniques of analysis, analysing ancient British records, some of which have been documented in the book Arthur and the Charters of the Kings. All the great historians of the Church in bygone days, particularly Cardinal Baronius and Cardinal Alford and Archbishop Usher and Stillingfleet, these historians name at least 25 ancient sources and references to Helen bringing the cross to Britain. The Dark Age records include those of Rome, Constantinople, Anglo-Saxon and Welsh.
There's a sealed cave, and we've put the old magic machine on it again.
We've put on the site, we've put a metal detector, and it shows up an object 4 to 4.5 feet long and about 1 foot by 1 foot, non-ferrous metal.
You go along, you put the machine on the wall, it goes ding, 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 ding. The cross is behind the wall at Nevin.
We think that matches the silver casket that she put the bit of cross in. Okay? So that's the sort of thing that we do. This is how we go about it, that's what we do.
Here's the normal stratification of the rock, and that is solid rock. If you notice the way the vein of the rock runs this way, here we've got slabs which can be removed.
Yeah.
This is man-made. This is not an ordinary wall. This has been put here to camouflage and blend in.
It's just shaped.
It was probably covered as well.
Like a cliff. Well, it was. When we got here, see the ivy there?
Yeah.
The fern, it was all over it.
That's where it is. X marks the spot. 8 feet back. 8 feet back from the actual entrance, maybe. 6, 8, 10 feet, something like that.
And the cave is done in a funny fashion, and I recognise that the shape of the wall, the sealed wall, is cleverly done, because you could look at it and think it's just the cliff continuation. When you look at it carefully, it's stones fitted to match the cliff. And so we said, hey, there's a map, and there's another cross, part of the cross carved on the cliff wall, and the stem of it goes down and is formed of stones on the false wall. You understand? This is a map. See the shape of it? See it goes around there, around that. You see the shape? The shape of the wall. It's a map. And you see the cross? Yeah. The cross is on the solid natural rock, but the base of it comes down off the rock and becomes part of the man-made wall.
That's right.
It's a pointer.
Yeah.
It's pointing to a place on this map. So all you do is find out where this is, this area, the map, go to where the cross is pointing.
And at
That's
the bottom of
the cross is here. The cross is where they want to go. It's a map.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's at the bottom of the cross?
Well, that's where you have to go when you find the place. It's a map off. You go there.
What, to find the real cross, do you mean?
No. There's loot there.
Right.
And what's here?
The cross.
The cross.
The cross in the box should be here.
You're actually
that is where it's
satisfied the cross is there?
Oh yeah.
I think I am too, because
Yeah. The cross is here, but that's pointing to a big treasure site.
we're getting a signal over here and a signal over there.
Yeah.
Because two parts of it are close.
Yeah. Well, there may be two
Close
things here.
proximity.
One will be, if it's right, the one is going to be a big box, 5 or 6 feet long, made of silver, jewels all over it, a lump of timber in it, right? What the other thing is, I don't know. Could be anything.
Well,
So
there's something, there's two things in here. There's not just one item.
Yeah, so
There
there's two
may
things.
be even
what we
more
got
than
here
two.
is an artifact we think here, right?
Yeah.
But this is a map telling you where you to go for something else.
So I said, that cross is pointing to something. So we found then that between the centre of the cross where it is and the foot where it was going to the ground, right? I said, look between the cross top and the centre of the cross where it intersects and the bottom. I said, see if you can see anything. So he goes up with the binoculars and he had an old telescope. He comes, hey Al, he said, there's a whacking big pile of white stones in a field. So I went down and had a look at these white stones, and well, they're easily the size of that table there. Bigger, some of them. Yeah, much bigger. The Pilgrim's Way, there's a cross on there.
Sure.
Thousands and thousands of tourists, pilgrims went there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Do you know that?
No.
Well, they did. They wore grooves with their feet in the rocks. And they want to stand on the one bit of stone to reach up and touch the foot of the cross. And that there's a metallic object about 4 or 5 feet long and about a foot behind the wall. And another one lower down.
Right.
Edward I, 1282, he demanded that the Welsh give him the Holy Cross and the crown of Arthur, because he knew they had them, and they wouldn't give it him.
Right.
Now, if he knew they had them, do you think he didn't have them? And do you think all those thousands of pilgrims went there for nothing? It's called the Pilgrim's Path.
Okay, Alan.
Don't tell me it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not telling you it's not there, Alan.
Well, down there, there's the castle of the Great Helen in Welsh. It's a ruined castle.
Where's that
There's,
then?
in West Wales, you know the Newport area?
Newport, Gwent,
Newport, Pembrokeshire.
Pembrokeshire.
North Cardigan.
Okay.
There's the castle of the Great Helen, the ridge, Kevin Bannon, the ridge of the Empress, the river of the Empress, Avon Bannon, the river of the Sanctuary, and so on. And I said to Richard Wire, a mate of us down, I said, can you get up on Carningley, the highest spot there, you know, get a telescope or something, and see if you can find anything down the centre line of the cross, you know, these things. You mark it on the map, you can see where you are. And he went up and he phoned us, he said, there's a strange pile of big white stones in a field. Well, these big white stones, they must cover about 20 yards by about 5 or 6 now, but they appear to have been laid out in a bolt shape, which is early Christian in Wales anyway. And they're the size of this desk nearly. They're whacking big stones.
Well, each one is the size of these.
Yes! They are half the size, some of them.
Yeah.
Now, the only place you can get those whacking big stones of that type is 7 miles away. So someone's brought them up onto this low hill.
So they've done it for a serious purpose then, haven't they?
That's right. And we found that there was a depression, looked like a track going, a tunnel or something, going down about 200 yards down this hill slope to where the road levels out, and the road outside the field. Down there, the farmer took us along, and there was a large round stone, like a millstone, there. And we rolled it aside, and there was a little porch built of stone. And this thing seemed to come from these white stones, a diagonal line, you see, down the slope. So we got a JCB, and we cut across this line. And someone in antiquity has dug it. You get a layer of earth on a Welsh hill so much, then you get a bit of a roof shale, and then you get more solid rocks and stones. In this case, someone had dug a trench 7 feet deep and 5 feet wide, 200 yards down the hill. They'd put all the big stones in the bottom and then all the loose stuff on the top. In other words, it's a perfect way to create a drain in an old field.
Another drain.
And so they're draining they're draining the water away from whatever is under the white stones. We think Helen's buried there. So we've done this sort of.
One question which arises about the claims is, why are these sites not known about? According to Alan Wilson, there is evidence that a major catastrophe occurred at some point in the 6th century, which wiped out most of the population and made parts of Britain uninhabitable for several years.
A comet struck Britain.
We haven't talked about the comet, have we?
It devastated the whole of Britain, and much of Britain the people were destroyed and killed. The remnant, you couldn't enter the devastated lands for 6, 7 to 11 years. The army was taken over to Brittany and waited, and Arthur was over in Brittany, Arthur II. Comet devastated Britain. This was written out of the history books. You see, the Angles and Saxons then moved in from Germany into empty lands. That's how all the Roman towns and Roman-style towns and cities in Britain were devastated. Now, when we started saying this, of course, there's an uproar. But Professor Michael Bailey of Queen's College, Belfast, he noted that he's a dendrochronologist, trees. He noted that all the forests of Britain and Ireland were devastated at this time.
And what was the year?
He thought it was 535, but we said 562. You couldn't say that debris from a comet had hit planet Earth because the church was going nuts. The Roman church, no stone could fall from Earth, on the Earth from the skies, you see. It wasn't until 1803 when strikes of comets all over France, they had to admit.
And this is the path of the comet?
Now, what's happening now, in Bolivia, scientists from the University of South Pennsylvania, the Chicago Museum, and Austin University in Texas are all over Bolivia. And what has happened, and they've got a pretty good date on this, they say 562, Bolivia was devastated by debris from a comet.
So this is where it landed then, in Bolivia?
The land was uninhabitable for about 7 to 11 years, identical. The pyramids, the made of mud brick, the palaces, the towns, the walls, the cities, everything was destroyed. And the only survivors had to move down to the coast to survive. Identical story in Britain, identical story in Bolivia, same time. It devastated parts of Ireland, and Bailey has noted Irish sort of ancient records. So it did happen. Gregory of Tours, The History of Franks, mentions how the both islands, that's Ireland and Britain, were set on fire from end to end and destroyed. And the date is again right. So that's Arthur, the destruction of Arthur's Britain. And now in the medieval romances you get the great wastelands where it's death to enter, the great wastelands.